We've come a long way in the last 10 months of this renovation, but there's a ton of work left to be done to realize my vision. It's nice to keep this big picture in mind because sometimes it feels like I'm not making any progress at all week to week, but it's the little things that add up, like getting in our shower pan and tub. Yeah, this thing was not easy to get up to the 3rd floor, but big man Brad made it happen.
That was you. You did it. I was there for moral support.
Yeah, especially with these tight stairs. Yeah, not easy, and this thing weighs 200 pounds. So this is a bit of a problem that our tub drain lands right on this joist. So it looks like we gotta shift it over one way or another. If we wanna move it to the right side of this joist, we have to move it like 5 inches, and I lose my whole windowsill. I don't really wanna do that. So we wanna try to move it this way, but I already have this wall framed. So I could either tear it all out and redo it in 2x3s, or I could do what I want to do right now, which is notch the bottom of this so that this pan can slide in a little bit deeper into this wall. I think it's the best option. So I got a multi-tool, gonna mark all this out, take out 1 inch on the bottom here. So we just bought ourselves like 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. So let's push this in and see how close we got. It's better, definitely better. We have a little framing job to work on today. I have a rough idea for this bathroom here. For one, I know that I'm gonna have like a cased opening aligned with this wall to that side, like around the bathtub, with some cool trim. And here, I've talked about it before, but I'm gonna have a shelf made of a big old piece of a joist that I have. So I need to build up this wall here, and that's gonna give the plumber room to attach his drain for the vanity here. So the first step here is getting the height for this wall, which I think if the vanity is 3 foot tall, I want to have 4 to 6 inches so that I can have a backsplash for the vanity. So we're going to start with that and just start framing away here. 3 foot, there's our vanity. Mark that out. Take off 1.5 from that. 40.5, 39 inches for the studs. I have a mark here that I thought I measured right, and this is like way under. I think I messed this up. I just realized there was another line drawn on it, and my line's down here, and I cut the wrong line. Now I can't use this. That's a rocky start right there. Let's run that back. All right, now on this side, we're gonna need some type of nailer. All right, did we get it level? Wow, we did. There you have it. I feel like we've just been cleaning up for the past 2 weeks here, but there's always junk to get rid of. Always. Tomorrow we have the termite treatment back here. Quick recap on the termite situation. When I bought the house, everything looked fine, looked great. I waived inspections on the house, so I was living in blissful ignorance until I took apart some of the walls, found some damage. This wood is like non-existent. I'm pretty sure it's termites. Yeah, it was termites, and they got everywhere in this house. Yeah, that's no good. At the beginning of the project, I had exterminators come by and they injected termecticide into all the soil surrounding the house. So they must be gone now, right? Well, that's what I thought until a couple weeks ago when I found more active termites.
So gross.
That's when I realized that we never really treated the dirt under the crawl space, which was probably creating a nice home for termites, and that's what we need to solve this week. All right. The first step of preparation is just to clear the area. Step number 2 is I'm gonna drill a 3/4 inch hole every 16 inches in between each of the joists. And I need to come back enough that I'm not hitting the concrete we poured here, but that I'm going into the dirt. Oh no. All right, bits in the crawl space. Yeah. Okay. While we're on this termite train of thought, I figured we might as well do some more of this preservative treatment through the basement and everywhere else we need it. And it's about a 2 or 3 to 1 ratio between this boracare and water. It's a very syrupy consistency. We got a pretty thorough soak here. You know, I'm gonna take this seriously because if we can't get rid of the termites, they're gonna eat my house. I'm gonna do several coats of this stuff. I'm gonna let this soak in and dry, come back to this, and just make it awful for termites. They're gonna wanna stay away from this house. Subfloor here, I got a ton in the basement up in the kind of joist bays where the sill plate is, because that's where the majority of the termite damage was. I think I'm also gonna spray it up in the shower areas and around windows, just because it's also a fungicide. So it'll help with mold growth and such. Hey.
Hey, how we doing?
Good morning. Thanks for coming by.
I got everything ripped out now.
Yep.
What are we seeing and where?
So yeah, previously we did the perimeter treatment. I found active termites over here. A bunch of them were in this corner when I tore this all out.
The colonies will end up breaking off. And then if the queen's up here, they could live up here for a little while.
And they can live in the wood? I thought they always lived subterranean.
Yes and no.
Termite treatment incoming. He needs to go fill up his tank with water. I pleaded with him to not have to roll back this vapor barrier, if we could just poke through, and he said it was like risking his license and FDA stuff, so I gotta crawl around down there. Cut the whole perimeter, then I'm gonna have to go down again, crawl around in the dirt, put it back, wish me luck. All right, this sucks. Here we go. Hey. This is the worst. Just start cutting. I don't know how I'm ever gonna get this back in, man. Whoa. Now we gotta roll. All right, we did it. We did it. We did it. We did it. Oh. Now it's time for the treatment, and they use this 4-foot long aluminum rod that's attached to a hose to a big tank on the back of their truck with this insecticide. The rod gets pushed into the ground, and then the liquid is injected, and there's a lot that kind of bubbles out of the hole, so I ended up down in the crawl space digging myself a little lake so all this liquid didn't just drip down into the basement. So the liquid injected into the holes is treating the perimeter, and then this lake in the middle will seep into the ground and just make it all toxic to termites. I bought this house because I thought it deserved a second chance, and oftentimes we don't give ourselves that same chance, especially when it comes to our careers. Triple Ten, the sponsor of today's video, helps people who are tired of their current roles learn something new and start fresh. Triple Ten is an online education platform offering boot camps to get you started in the high-paying tech industry with no prior experience. If you're not sure about coding, they also offer programs in UX/UI design. 82% of graduates get hired within just 6 months of completing the program. If you don't land a job, Triple Ten offers a 100% tuition refund. You can start learning a new profession from just $200 per month. So when you're ready to get started, you can click the link in my description or scan the QR code for a free career consultation. Thanks again to Triple Ten for sponsoring this week's video. If you've been following this series from the beginning, you probably noticed some new kitchen designs at the start of this video. So I want to take a moment to talk design. Here we are in the Twinmotion model, the visualization program I use, and I've just been doing a lot of refinement. So one thing is, this needs to be bumped out for HVAC. Previously, this was all just one surface, which was cleaner, but honestly, this little bump, it doesn't bother me as much as I thought it might. So into the kitchen, this is the layout that, if you've been following, you're probably familiar with. It's just a one-wall kitchen with a pantry, fridge, range. There's also a range hood integrated into the cabinet above. Some people were wondering about that. And one change that I've made here is, in the beginning, I was actually trying to do open shelves on the right just to open up this space. But what I realized is it's actually really quite hard to get this cabinet and the range aligned with this drop down in the ceiling, which is where a beam is. Having that as this like regulating line that I need to hit in the kitchen just makes it really tricky when I'm not doing like custom sized cabinets and whatnot. So I realized that doing this soffit gives a place to mount lights, gives a natural kind of frame for the ceiling detail I want to do in here. And also doing these upper cabinets just is probably better than the open shelves in the long term. Also, similar to the bathrooms, I'm experimenting with this green fluted tile, which is definitely going to be a little bit harder to clean with the three-dimensionality of it. But I love the idea of light catching this geometric surface and, you know, creating interesting shadows and light. I am kind of worried about just being too trendy. I think it's a lot safer to go with a white tile. So just let me know what you think, if it's worth going bold. Also with the finishes, I've decided to go with like a wood look finish. It'll be IKEA cabinets, so it'll just be a veneer, like a laminate, unfortunately. But just keeping the warm tones with the ceiling that hopefully will be real wood. My refinished pine floors. I think it'll be nice, and it's definitely kind of like a mid-century modern inspired design. It's a cool style, but even that is kind of a trend right now. So definitely not as safe as white cabinets, but white cabinets are boring. So looking the other way here, I have the booth on the right, and the whole idea of this kitchen is just to try to make it a place that you want to hang out and not just a place to cook. So I love the idea of this big booth, and I'm experimenting with wrapping it to kind of make this threshold a little bit smaller, but then you get an extra surface that, you know, from the backside you could have a bar stool back here, you could do potential food prep back there if you need more counter space to have someone chopping vegetables, or you can just put plants on there. And this design here is kind of the alternative of just doing a bench along the long wall, which does kind of give you a bigger table and maybe a more functional seat, to be honest. But it just is a different vibe with the space. And with this layout, I don't think I'd want to block this off, although I could. So again, would love to know your thoughts on that. And this big mat for decor, this is just something I built a while ago, and I have pins on with all my travel, and it's just a fun conversation starter and a cool feature artwork that fits perfectly in this little area up here. So another design change, you might remember a while ago I was thinking about just doing one kind of weird out of place column, and some people didn't like that, and I've also came to my senses, and I'm just gonna do this as like a drywall column essentially, and maybe have this screen type thing in there, and it wouldn't just be slats, it would probably be like hopefully an ornate like laser cut or CNC routed pattern. But I could take or leave that. You could have a little shelf here, but really what's nice about having this is drywall, the column's right here, and I would build out drywall to the right of the column, and that gives me a chase for electrical, and it's a very convenient spot for a light switch for the kitchen. So as you're going up the stairs to go to bed, you can flip off those lights. And another light switch here that would be for the living room back here. As this comes together, you know, I'm just slowly refining this model, experimenting with finishes and trying to get my switch locations, light locations, all of that type of stuff. Hopefully you know me by now, and you know that I'm very indecisive. So even though I've kind of landed on that previous kitchen option, I couldn't help but just explore yet another option. This would be a whole lot more expensive, but maybe a more functional kitchen, having this fridge across from the stove and the sink. And you could have a deep appliance garage in here that would be under the cabinets, and kind of a peninsula, which is not super effective because of the structural wall that sits right here. But you could still have a little bit of that casual seating, but generally sacrifices the casual seating in the kitchen, moves the dining room to the back. This is kind of what we've been exploring in previous design-oriented episodes, with a little bit of difference here. The main thing I don't like about it is that it makes the house feel a little bit more like a tunnel, having this right side all built out rather than having it all the way open. And another change here too is that because we're bumping out this section for HVAC, that kind of eliminated my spot right here where I wanted a bench to put on your shoes, store shoes, because it just gets narrower between the couch and that bench. So you could potentially do that kind of integrated on the cabinet wall and have a little built-in bench place to put your shoes. So just a tempting option to explore, but probably one that I'm not gonna go for. But you know, who knows, 10, 15 years down the road, maybe I'd want to redo the kitchen again. This process has been very challenging because it's very different from architecture school, where I get to just have fun with an imaginary budget and come up with the coolest design ideas. Whereas here, I'm the homeowner, I'm the designer, I'm financing this whole project, and I'm also probably going to be building it as the general contractor. So there's so many more factors at play here. But that said, I can't help but have these kind of dangerous design ideas, dangerous because they're expensive. And I want to show you a dream I have here. So this is kind of the normal kitchen design, but imagine, like, I'm thinking of it like a micro courtyard almost, like having exterior cladding, the hardy board in this little sliver of space. And essentially I'm taking the back room of the house and just separating it from the rest by 3 feet. Only conceptually, the back wall of the back room has to stay in the same spot. So I'm losing 2.5 to 3 feet, making the back room only 6 feet deep. So it's sacrificing a lot of space, but the experience could be super cool. But as you can imagine, a glass ceiling like this, probably pretty expensive. And one of the coolest details here is kind of piggybacking on the glass catwalk I have up on the 3rd floor. Imagine if you had like almost a river, you could do a pump and a water feature, but like have this recessed area of the floor that's full of rocks and pebbles and ferns, and then a metal grate that stretches over that, which it'd be funny like trying to sweep the floor and like all your crumbs go into this metal grate. I don't know, maybe not the most efficient design, but how cool would it be? And then this metal grate kind of stops on the edges, and you'd have plants integrated into the base, into this like rock garden down below. And on both sides, you have this garden vibe. And when you have all this light coming in from above, you could do hanging plants and just have this really interesting thing in the house. Like, I don't know, I think it looks pretty pretty premium. That's probably because it would be, and it'd be very expensive. And then the back room, you just have a coffee bar and a nice little couch here where you can sit in the sun. The sun, morning sun comes around this way. So this would be a nice sunny spot to drink your coffee in the morning. That's all I'm looking for this back room. So, could be kind of cool. Next, I want to talk about the experience going from the first floor up to the second floor. And what I've noticed from having friends over and just people walking through, as you'd imagine, it's kind of weird to look directly above you when you're walking up the stairs. Likely you're looking down at your feet or you're looking straight ahead. The result of that is you really miss this whole experience with the glass catwalk thing and the skylights. That would be a shame if people just don't really, notice the height of the ceiling and the interesting detail here. And a side note too, the floor, the glass walkway, it's going to be frosted, it's going to have privacy, maybe like a faux stained glass, maybe just using the real stained glass I got last week. The door to the bathroom is right under that glass walkway, so I don't want to be worried about coming out in a towel, if my roommate's on the second floor and him looking up. So rest assured, that'll be all taken care of. Previously, we talked about this idea for a mirror on this whole back wall, which is actually pretty achievable. I've done some research and you can get acrylic sheets with a mirror finish that are easy to cut, easy to install, and it seems doable to me. The cool design of the space is literally right in your face. Like if you're walking up the stairs and looking straight ahead, you can't miss it. You can't miss seeing this beam coming through. I'll have plants up top. You can see the skylights immediately. You can see the glass bridge reflected. It's I think it makes such a huge difference. And another note, up at the top, you see these leaves. I have a giant 5-year-old Monstera plant that I'm really proud of, and currently it's in my living space. So again, you can't miss it. But here, I just don't want to tuck it away up on the 3rd floor where no one can see it. So with this mirror, you can see those giant leaves stretching out towards the skylight all the way down on the 1st floor when you're coming up to the 2nd floor. So that's really exciting. I've also started to model out my studio up here, a place for my printer and PC setup, and I like the idea of having this kind of floating workbench table, even for, filming YouTube videos and having more space to put up lights. And I'm just very excited to have this space for a studio because my current space, it's very small. And in the back of the house here is my bedroom, which is also very small, but I love working with small spaces and making them flexible and just functional. So I think here building out a closet system and a little nook for the bed could be really successful, and leave enough space for end tables on both sides and reading lights built into those cabinets could be really cool. And along the window, I could have more storage and a bench seat, which is very similar to my bedroom right now. I have a little window seat with my plants, and I love a little detail where my curtains go, where my curtains can be closed, but all the plants in the window bay can still get light. And that's what I'm thinking about for this bedroom area as well, where the curtain is actually in front of this storage. Back to this atrium area, if I get rid of this mirror, you can see another idea where I could just build out a whole glass wall window system where there's the door on the left, a fixed light on the right, and you could do transoms. And this just further pushes my design idea of trying to get light into the center of the house, which is uncommon with Philly row homes because you have the party walls shared with your neighbors on either side. And then you have just light in the front and back, usually taken by the bedrooms. So by introducing all this transparency, you would get the great morning light from the back of the house coming deeper in. And this is also inspired by mid-century design, which is often inspired by Japanese design, which often has interesting sliding rice paper panels that let light in while allowing transparency. This type of idea is one that's reserved for long in the future. Maybe I'll want to do it, maybe I won't. All right, now back to reality here. It's nice to kind of know what future plans may or may not be, because it means I can kind of plan accordingly. So if I ever wanted glass down there and big pane of glass there, I would want to get rid of that stud and potentially just all this framing and put in a glass system on this whole wall. And up at the top too, have windows up there. The tricky thing is, the ceiling is actually supported by all this framing. So I want to add some straps up there on the 2x4s supporting the ceiling drywall on both sides here too, and that will essentially hang these from the roof structure, which is independent of all this stuff, which would mean that then theoretically you could take all this out and reframe it a lot more easily. It can't hurt to just add more support. I just noticed this condition that definitely needs to be resolved. Our big triple joist that is the header for the skylight framing. This is landing on the wood that's on top of the brick wall. And over here, it's barely on that. It's essentially sitting on like the soffit framing as the roof extends out. We really need blocking under here so that the load from this is transferred down to this header. I've been looking at this whole roof, and it's just kind of scary when you think of snow loads. We're loading up these rafters a little bit more than they were before because we're hanging the ceiling from the rafters. The 2x4s do, you know, carry some of the strength themselves, but it's definitely gonna load the rafters. And then the plywood, I don't know if the plywood in the new roof is lighter or heavier than the existing layers. It's probably lighter because there's not as many layers. These old rafters are terribly undersized. This is like 6 inches or so. And they haven't deflected much actually in the past 175 years. But with the new load and, you know, if you get a really heavy snow, it's kind of scary. First step, we can mark a line here. Now these are basically just giant shims, and I can make sure each of the 3 are in good contact with the header because I can hammer each of these in kind of individually. And just like that, it's done. Well, it's pouring and it's really dark. It's Friday, so I'm gonna go home. We're gonna kick back into gear eventually. It's just, you know, burnout. It's been what, 42 weeks. It's so crazy, and not just the work of the house, but mainly I'm really proud of the work to do weekly YouTube videos is a whole lot. So as always, I really appreciate your support. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you next week.